share. Here we go. There's our opening slide. And I just wanted you to see it, the title, to remind you what we're doing tonight. And I'll stop screen sharing now. And Frank, can you turn your camera?
All right.
Is Kara and Greg, did you start recording as well as Summer?
Yes.
Okay. So Kara and Greg are
Yes.
recording, Summer.
Yes.
Just wanted to know. Okay. So this is Greg Olston from the Arizona Poor People's Campaign. He's been very actively participating in the Culture of Peace Alliance, which is the fiscal sponsor of this program, and the umbrella nonprofit. And the Arizona Poor People's Campaign is also one of our affiliate programs. And he is going to introduce Frank to all of us. Thank you.
Hi, good evening and welcome. It's my pleasure to be able to introduce my friend and colleague from the Arizona Poor People's Campaign, Frank Thompson. Frank's been a member of the Arizona PPC Coordinating Committee for the last year, virtually since our inception as a statewide group. And Frank is very active. He's also a longtime member of a veterans group, Common Ground. He's a military veteran. He has been a speaker at both local and national Poor People's Campaign events in Tucson, elsewhere around the state, and also in Washington, D.C. for a large national rally of our organization. He's an engineer, was and recently again a high school teacher. He's a longtime resident of Tucson, where he lives with his wife and family. And voting rights is his passion. So I give you Frank Thompson. Thanks, Frank.
Thanks, Greg. Want to make sure everybody can see.
Yep.
Can everybody see? Am I sharing it properly?
Yes, I can see it.
Yes, you are. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Like Greg pointed out, I do get into voting rights. But I just repeat some of what Greg had just said. My name is Frank Thompson. I'm a Vietnam era veteran, served in the United States Air Force from 1966 through 1973. I'm a retired engineer, worked for IBM for 28 years. I left IBM and taught 7th and 8th grade math for TUSD for 10 years. Now, the organizations I'm associated with are the Vietnam Veterans of America, Common Defense, and the Arizona Poor People Campaign. I want to say I do appreciate being invited to speak tonight on voting rights with a focus on the Constitution. I only hope that I don't get too academic, maybe causing you to want to take a nap. And I do hope we have some fun tonight discussing this. I, unfortunately, have always had a nagging feeling that when I talk to people, now although we talk a lot about the Constitution, sometimes I think we neglect to understand what is actually in the document and what it means to us. Now, I'm going to start this discussion by quoting the Declaration of Independence, which defines the objective of this particular presentation. Reading is the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they're endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Now I want to point to that because that's what we're going to get back to. In the Constitution, there are a number of amendments.
Frank, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you need to change slides for us to see those
Oh, I
things.
will. I
Okay,
will.
I'm sorry.
But I wanted to just say that, okay, we got the 15th Amendment, gives you the right to vote, regardless of race or color. The 19th Amendment, which grants the right to vote to women. And the 26th Amendment, which gives the age, change the age from to voting to be 18. After saying that, though, however, I want to focus on the 14th Amendment. And that, what we generally take an operation from of how we look at reading the amendments, including voting and abortion and all the other stuff. The 14th Amendment states all persons born and naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof and citizens of the United States or of the state wherein they reside. Now you guys can read this for yourself, but no state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the law. I had previously contacted a number of constitutionalists and lawyers about what I was reading here. And what I had found out from them was that most of the time people argue this to the Supreme Court, they are focused on equal rights, equal amendment, or equal protection under the law. But what I want to do tonight is focus you on another part, which I've highlighted, that no state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of the citizens of the United States. I don't have anybody ever talking about that because voting rights is one of our privileges and one of the immunities of the United States. This is section 1. And to make this point clear, they go to section 2 where they read representatives. Now this is a part that focuses on the punishment if the states do it. But when the right to vote of any person of any election is denied to any of the male inhabitants, that was changed in the 19th Amendment, being 21 years of age and citizens of the United States are in any way abridged except for participation in rebellion or other crime, the basis of representation therein shall be reduced. That's the punishment for it. So that we see both places where it talks about no state should be writing laws related to the abridgment of our rights. And because a lot of people don't know what that word means, I want to direct your attention to the word abridge in the 14th, 15th, and 19th Amendments, always there. Both Webster and dictionary.com defines abridge as to reduce or lessen in duration, scope, or finish, curtail, to deprive, cut off. Think about what they're doing to voting rights. If you think what they're doing to voting rights and what this defines, you see the states are doing exactly those things. Lessen in duration, the amount of time people can vote, the scope of how they can vote, the authority given to them, and deprive and cut off people from voting situations and opportunities. But what they overlooked when they started doing all this was what the conservatives have always talked about, states' rights. They've been talking about states' rights ever since the 50s. And in the 10th Amendment, which gives them that, the power is not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited it by it to the states or reserved to the states respectively or to the people. Now, because of that, I want to direct you to the state, the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by the states. I want to point that out to you because that's an important statement. The reason behind it's important is that Section 5 of 14th Amendment states that Congress shall have the power to enforce by appropriate legislation provisions of this article, meaning each amendment. The amendments, those addresses are the 14th, 15th, 19th, 23rd, 24th, and 26th Amendment, all voting amendments that theoretically or inherently, the states shouldn't be writing any laws related to those the amendments of the Constitution. Also keep in mind that the 14th Amendment was ratified in 1868 and the 50th Amendment was ratified in 1870. And you could see the point of why they wanted to take those options away from the states, because they knew what the Southern states were going to do. The time period of that reflects that. Unfortunately, everybody's always ignored that. And we've moved past that because many of our states didn't really want to focus on that. And that's what happened, is that they've ignored that, even though the states are not allowed to do that, as stated by the 10th Amendment, which then says that those powers are reserved to the changing those amendments are reserved to the Congress. However, the 10th Amendment gives us another situation. Again, no state shall abridge the privileges, amenities of the people of this country, which is the 15th, 19th, 26th Amendment. The question we have to ask ourselves is, what does this mean for Arizona? What does this mean for us? And I'm gonna go back to the 10th Amendment because conservatives often talk about states' rights. And I want you to point out the one thing it says, not delegate to the United States, but one other set of words, or to the people. That's where we come in at. Because what it allows us to do is when our legislations fail, we have options, we have solutions that we can exercise. We don't generally, but we can exercise. And that gives us the right of putting laws on the books that the people can vote on that supersedes our state legislation. They don't like these options for us because the people override anything that they do. They cannot recall a law that the people voted on, and the governor can't veto it. Those three areas are referendums, proposals to repeal a law that was previously enacted. Initiatives, proposal of a new law, a constitutional amendment that placed on the ballot by petition by collecting signatures and certain number of people, of citizens. And proposals to enact new laws, a constitutional amendment, repeal existing laws, a constitutional amendments. A lot of us have voted for these things and not realizing that they were put on by grassroots, they were put on by people, groups like ours, and we voted on them. And yet you can see today that the conservatives now are trying to restrict the power of these things and trying to avoid getting these on the ballots. In Arizona right now, they've got 4 House bills that they want to get through, that they're trying to get through. One bill prohibits the teaching of African American history from grades 1 through 12. That offends me because the nature of the bill says that I can't go talk to kids about my life and how I was raised, because now it becomes political. Then there's a bill that directs tax dollars to private universities and schools. Now, they have other bills that direct funding from into the to the private area, away from the public area. And they're trying to do this stuff through the bill through Congress. A bill that prevents cities and towns from raising minimum pay. But also there's a bill that would give ability of one dissenting county to stop initiative that the majority of Arizonans would want on the ballot. Meaning if you get the initiative that you want to put on the ballot, one county, usually the most conservative, just like we had in the last election, can now interfere and stop any process of putting something on the ballot that the majority of the people want. What can we do? And as Arizonans, as people in this state, we can look at our initiative, the proposal of new constitutional amendment that's placed on the ballot by petition by collecting signatures. Arizona for Fair Elections has such an initiative that they wanted to put on the ballot that was going to negate or mitigate everything that they had done before on voting restrictions. But as I understand it, it was rejected by a congressional committee of judges that was friendly to the governor. I think the governor picked them. And then they found something wrong with it. That's where the problem comes in at, because now, whether we like it or not, our judges have gotten political. And they can find something wrong with anything and then deny it. But this is where our strength comes in at, because we need to band together as different organizations, different groups, because we've got different people who knows and understands how to put these initiatives together. Our strength is in us, all of us coming together and creating these initiatives and laws and going forward with them. And we've got all these groups here already, many of them, like Arizona Fair Elections and Save Our Schools, who have background in creating initiatives and referendum. We have groups at the League of Women Voters and other People First, and even Arizona Poor People's Campaign. And there are others who all know how to get the people together to go out for a signing petition to get these measures on a ballot. Get these initiatives created, get them on the ballot. But we have to come together and create a cottage industry of such that we are then can make sure that the different initiatives we want, that we need, is placed on that ballot that overrides anything that gerrymandering district for Republican advantage, we can take that away from them. That's why they want to kill the ability for the people to work. This goes back to what I was trying to suggest when I was talking about this. And in that part of the Declaration of Independence, that men deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. We are the governed. We also are the government. They are representatives. And whatever consent we bequeath them, we can take back. The 10th Amendment gives us, as Arizonans, the power to take that power back to ourselves. We just have to organize and understand who has what information, who has what knowledge, and then somehow seed all the other organizations with helping create the environment, helping create the initiative, helping create the ballot, the bills, and put these on the ballots for the people of Arizona to vote for. That's our solution. That's how we can go from crying, being a pity party, crying about a cinema and mansion, to an active society, an active group that actually creates and impedes anything that they want to do, because we have a growing number here that we can now move forward for ourselves. And that's what we have to do. We have to create that action network and get these things done. The ball's in our court. We know they're not going to help, but we do have a way, by way of the 10th Amendment, and those people already understand how to create these things, a way to solve the issues that we won't solve. That's the gist of my discussion and what my presentation is. I'm hoping it was presented in a way that you were all able to understand what I was driving at and what I was talking to. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you very much. I know Beth wants to ask a question, but before we do that, see, that's why I can't keep my camera on. I'm sorry. We need to talk about what we're going to do tonight, since all of the people that basically RSVP'd, except maybe Molly, didn't show up. How do we want to proceed? Because I don't want to keep the facilitators here if their only reason for being here is to facilitate, because we can clearly we don't have to go into breakout rooms to do the questions. So I'd like to hear from facilitators what they want to do. Do you want to leave, or do you want to stay and participate? It's totally okay, whatever you decide. I totally accept whatever. because I'm so appreciative of you being here. So, Abby, do you have an opinion about what you want to do?
Oh, yes, but I don't know why you asked the question because, yeah, I would like to participate because the presentation is so, yeah, touch me, so.
Thank you, Abby. Well, I asked the question because people came as facilitators.
Yeah,
So I want to give them permission to back out if they need, if they don't want to stay. Marge, what would you like to do?
I appreciate very much what's going on here. I do, however, prefer to drop out at this point in time.
Okay, thank you, Marge, very much. Feel
My
free to
pleasure.
leave.
Thank you.
Kara Schwartz, what would you like to do?
First, I just want to say thank you for all your work and your passion, Frank. And I really loved your presentation and I got it. So thank you. You did a great job. And because we're a lower number tonight, I'm going to go and just have a self-care night. But thank you so much and have a wonderful rest of your discussion.
Thank you, and I truly mean it. Thank you for being here, and you're welcome to go.
Thank you.
And Elizabeth, what would you like to do?
I'll stay and participate.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you very much. Okay, so now we're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Simmer, are you here? Are you do you want to
I'm right here.
Do you want to participate?
Sure,
Okay.
I'll participate.
I think we can, I don't think we need to go into separate breakout rooms. Abby and Elizabeth, could I get you to co-facilitate the questions for all of us? Or do you want me to do it and then you all can participate? What do you want to do? Either
Yeah.
one.
I would like to participate.
Okay, okay. So we have 2 questions, Beth and Greg. Beth, you go first. Don't take much time because we have to get through the questions. And I got to get up the script so I can I can look at the questions. So Beth, go ahead and ask your
So
question.
I just had I love your presentation and your different take on this. I just had a couple points that this last
Honey,
election
I don't
was
want you to make any points about it. If you have a question, ask it. If not, wait and do it in the dialogue. Because it might be a part of the answers to the questions. Can you please do that? Only
okay,
ask.
I had comments, not questions.
No, I don't want comments now. Now is not the time for commentary because we're accepting his presentation as it is, and we'll discuss things in answer to questions in the dialogue. Okay? Okay. Greg, what was yours?
So my question is, Frank mentioned the referendums, initiatives, proposals. Is there also a recall of legislators in Arizona? I'm still new to Arizona and finding these things out. So that's my question. Is it possible to recall legislators or elected officials?
That I'm not sure about. I didn't investigate recalls. I'm just trying to
think
get,
that's a
I just
California
looked at getting laws on the books.
Thank you.
Tara, can you, I need to look at the script so that I have the questions handy. So I
Okay.
need help with screen sharing the guidelines and the content that I sent in that PowerPoint to you, please.
I thought I had it, I have it printed out.
Well, I want you to
don't have
screen
it.
share it. I want you to, can you screen share it? Greg has it. Greg, can you screen share it?
I sure can.
Okay, it's okay, Kara.
Let's see.
And in the chat, Molly says, a recall can be filed against any public officer on any grounds, but they may not be filed until after the elected official has been in office in his or her first term for at least 6 months, except state legislators.
Thank you.
In chat.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Let's see, do you know how far down this one is?
Can you make it a slideshow so it's?
Oh, yeah, let me just move this. Oh,
I thought you were talking about the facilitator.
Go back to the guidelines. Greg, go back
Okay.
one. Okay. Okay, here we go. So, let's see. Greg, why don't you read this slide to us?
So guidelines are treat each other with respect, one person at a time, using the talking piece.
Which we don't have because we're not
Okay.
in person.
No side conversations, silence your cell phone. What is said in the circle stays in the circle, and silence your cell phone. Go forward.
Yes, please.
Okay. I can continue. Listen from
Okay,
the
now,
heart.
here, hang on, Greg. I'm gonna have someone else read them.
All right.
So the
Thank
circle
you.
intentions. Kara, can you read the first one, please?
Listen from the heart. Quiet your thoughts and your body. Listen without interruption. Listen to others as you would like to be listened to. Want me to go on?
Thank you. Yeah, we'll call on someone to read the next one.
Okay, Abby, would you want to read the second one? Uh,
For some reason, she's
yeah,
not
she
here.
stepped away. Elizabeth,
ask-
would you like to read the second one?
Sure. Speak from the heart. Speak as honestly as your feelings of safety in the circle allow. When speaking your experience, use I instead of you.
I was reading. I didn't know I was on. I was.
Oh, well, you can read the next one, Abby.
Be lean of speech. Say what you need to say in as direct way as possible. Tell what is most important to be heard. Honor time so that everyone is heard.
And Frank, can you read the last one, please?
Be spontaneous. Try not to practice or rehearse what you will say, nor evaluate what you have said.
Thank you. Any questions about these before we go to the next slide? Okay, go to the next slide, please.
No, not moving.
I can't remember now what the next slide is.
Oh,
You should just be able to use an arrow
there-
key.
okay,
Arrow. Okay,
Is this-
this-
is it
so these
repeat?
are them individually. We don't need to do this. So you can stop screen, yeah, just stop screen sharing because that closes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
There we go.
okay, now I'm going to make smaller my screen of you guys, of you, you're not all guys, of the wonderful people who are part of participating tonight. And that is all of us except for me. And this here. So I am Satbir. How is our time? 7:37. We're a little bit behind. Not too much. I'm Satbir, and I'm going to neutrally facilitate, which means I'm not going to participate in the conversation, and I'm not going to respond to your comments either. I will be, oh yes, I'm going to be scribing. Oh my gosh. I need help with that. I can't do this and scribe. Who can scribe for me?
I can scribe. Elizabeth?
Thank you, Elizabeth. I'd
Mhm.
appreciate that. Okay. Our circle will last about an hour and 5 minutes, maybe a little bit less, since we're a little bit behind. And we've reviewed the guidelines. And because we're on Zoom, I'm going to be asking for someone to respond to the question as I ask it. And if there's too much silence for too long, I might then just voluntold somebody to do it. But I think enough of us have experience that we'll be able to move forward through the process pretty easily. And then whoever is speaking will invite the next person to speak. And again, if it takes too much time, then I'll gently invite someone to speak. I want to remind you that this is a dialogue, so we will be speaking one at a time and listening. Most of the evening, all of us will be listening more than anything else. Okay? I think that's really important. We are on a tight schedule. So again, we ask you to be lean of speech and come to your point directly so that everyone has time to share. I'm also the timekeeper. It may be necessary for me to signal if we need to move forward due to time. Since we're on Zoom, I will try to do it gently, interrupt you to allow all to speak within our time allowed. Please understand that I will do this only to make sure all have a voice and that we honor our allotted time. Now, are there any concerns or questions about what we've discussed so far? Not the presentation, but just the guidelines and everything. I can't see. Let me see. Are we okay to move forward? Okay, thank you. To begin, let's do a short introductory round. So just very briefly, your name, your pronouns if you like, and one thing that you understand about the Constitution or voting rights from the presentation. Again, it's just a short answer, just like half a minute, 45 seconds. Please say your name, your pronouns if you like, and one thing that stood out to you from the presentation we just heard from Frank. Okay, so I am going to invite, well, is anyone willing to start? Okay, thank you, Kara. Kara Bissell.
Kara Bissell, she, hers. I think I've got a feeling that, Frank, you made it very clear that it's up to us as the people to take control. Sort of the corollary implied is that the people in our elected positions aren't doing the job they should be doing.
Go ahead and offer it to someone, Kara.
And I would like to call on, is it Beth or Betts Horowitz?
It's Beth, yeah.
Beth.
Hi, I missed. What was the particular question?
To give our name, our pronouns if we wish, and something we got out of Frank Thompson's presentation.
Brief,
Oh,
very
okay.
brief.
Beth Horowitz, and I liked what he had to say about the 10th and 14th Amendments. And I think that's useful and needs to be argued in front of the Supreme Court.
Go ahead and invite someone to speak, Beth. Okay, well, I will then. Who would like to?
I was saying Greg.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
so I'm Greg Olsta. Pronouns are he and him. I guess my reaction, of course, unique to me, or maybe not just to me, is that I find it appalling the way government actually works compared to the way, it was laid out to work in the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. Thanks.
Calling someone, yeah.
Patricia, can you go?
My name is Patricia, and my pronouns are she and her. And what stood out to me, the most impressive part was that Frank laid out a path forward, an optimistic path forward that we can and should try to take.
Thank you, Patricia. Can you see to invite someone to speak?
Yes. How about Pierre?
I'm I just entered the call, so I probably don't have anything worth sharing at this point.
Well, say your name.
Okay, hi. My name is Pierre Thompson. I am a Jesuit who just moved to Phoenix about a month and a half ago. I've had the chance to get to know Greg a little bit over the past few weeks, and yeah, I've had the chance to protest with members of the Poor People's Campaign out in California as well.
Okay. Thank you, Pierre. Glad you're here. I'd like to invite Abby to speak, please. Next.
Yeah, my name is Abby Nagbe. She, her, I found very interesting the proposed bill being considered.
You may invite, is that what you wanted to say, Abby, or did you have more?
Yes.
Okay, can you invite someone, please?
Seymour.
Yeah.
Oh, it's you, right?
No, Simmer is,
Okay.
he's my 15-year-old intern. Yes, invite him.
Yes, so basically, I learned we should vote, and it's our duty to vote. We should do it whenever we can, and voting is only for our benefit. So do it whenever we can. That's what I learned.
And Simmer, can you invite someone to speak, please?
Who hasn't talked yet? I don't know. Let me see.
Molly.
All right, I'll invite Molly.
I also joined a little late, but I will just introduce myself. I'm Molly. I use she and her pronouns. And the thing I found most interesting was the 14th Amendment, the abridge, just verbiage and how that could be utilized in a pretty specific kind of way. Who can I pass this off to?
I'll go.
Perfect.
My name is Elizabeth. I use she, her pronouns. And to reiterate, I'm not sure who said it earlier, but how optimistic and positive the presentation was throughout. I think sometimes when you're, listening to the mainstream headlines, it's kind of like, oh my gosh, everything's so broken and but I really like that there's tangible actions that we can take. I think it's hard to remember that sometimes when things are so awful in the news in the political sphere. So thank you for the information and the way that you presented it.
Thank you, everyone. Now, there's somebody named Wendy who she's connecting to audio. Did anyone notice if she was here during the presentation? Wendy, hi, were you here during the presentation? Hello, Wendy? Okay, well, we'll move on and hopefully we'll hear from her on the other questions. Okay, thank you again for sharing a little bit about yourself and the presentation. Our next question is about one of Frank's concerns, which has to do with whether people actually read or study the Constitution. So based on that, please consider this question. How do you learn about the constitutional basis of voting rights? It's okay to pass, and I'll come back to you for your response. Again, we're doing pretty well with this, inviting each other to speak. So I will invite, Wendy, can you hear us? Okay. I'm not getting anything from her right now. So I'll invite Beth to speak to this question. How do you learn about constitutional voting rights? Constitutional basis or the Constitution and voting.
Did you say me?
I did, Beth, yes.
Oh, okay. I just want to clarify, it's how do we learn or how have we learned?
Either
Like,
one, either one.
So I think, you know, there's a group called CEBV that's doing a lot of work on voting. And I think presentations like this and NPR and articles are good ways to learn about what's happening in the field of voting rights. And request to speak is something I know I need to do with the Arizona legislator. But I do think a poor job is done in schools, or the school that I went to, even though it was a good school.
Okay,
So-
thanks, Beth. Who do you want to invite to speak next?
Simar.
Well, so last year I took an AP US Government and Politics class, and I had a pretty amazing teacher, and that's how I learned. That's how I learned about our government, the way it works, what the amendments are, and the checks and balances, stuff like that. So I think that's all. I'd like to invite Pierre.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you. Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I tend to think of like the history of our country as kind of the history of the struggle to expand the franchise for more and more groups of people. I think, I mean, I have to admit, I have a copy of the constitutions on my desk, but it's been a long time since I've actually opened it. I think I probably rely more on like the media, and particularly instances where you know, the franchise is restricted, and kind of in that roundabout way to learn about the constitutional basis for voting rights.
Pierre, can you invite someone, please?
Sure. Para, would you like to speak?
Pierre, yeah. Close at hand. The 26th Amendment being that everyone that's 18 and above has the right to vote now, and passed in what, 1971, I think, I remember reading, and just reading it over ourselves. The idea that we can take control when there are legislative bodies that are working to go against the actual Constitution. I think that was a message that was brought out by you, wasn't it, Frank? And that we need to combat. And the more united front we have with as many organizations as possible, we need to have the hundreds of thousands of people coming out in full force, letting our government know this is what we need. This is what you need. It's for us, it's for our country, it's for the world.
Okay, thanks, Kara. How do you want to invite someone, please, now?
I would like to invite Abby.
I'm sorry, I will pass because I do not really know much about the Constitution. So
Every answer is correct. How can
I
you
am-
learn about it? How can you learn about it, Abby?
is to study, to read it and apply it in my life and vote. And join the organization and discussion, community discussion like this one to learn about and be involved in my community.
Thank you. So I just want to mention that most of the council members and the county supervisors have copies of these in their offices that you can get. It's also available online, and you also can go to the library and look for them. Okay.
Thank you.
So, Abby, who would you like to invite?
Pierre?
Pierre already went.
Sorry, I just spoke.
Sorry, Wendy?
Yeah, it seems like she's just listening rather than
Oh, okay.
talking, so I'm sorry.
Patricia,
Mm.
Patricia?
Yes. I learned in high school about the two amendments that gave the one that gave the women the right to vote and the one that gave us that lowered the voting age to 18. And that's about all I learned in high school about the Constitution. I learned more from Frank's presentation than I've ever known my whole life about the Constitution. And I have done some self-reading of the Constitution myself, but I still learned a whole lot more from Frank's presentation than I learned from self-reading it myself. So thank you.
Can you invite someone, Patricia?
How about Molly?
Thank you.
Yeah, just listening to what everybody else had to say, it occurred to me I do a lot of like documentaries. So like the 1619 project that's on Hulu, they talk a lot about the various amendments. There's a lot of different documentaries on Netflix and HBO, and then also the media, which got mentioned earlier. You know, when hot button issues arise, specifically Arizona, you hear a lot about, you know, certain voting rights and things of that nature. Individual reading groups I'm involved with, like the Women's Voting League that was mentioned earlier. High school, I'm currently back in college as an older student, so I feel like I've had some decent kind of awareness of more constitutional amendments recently because I'm doing a public service and public policy degree. So that's been really beneficial and also made Frank's presentation very applicable to what I'm talking about right now, and a lot of the essays and things just work-wise that I'm doing for school. So the other thing, we do mail-in ballots, and we actually get a lot of info from Arizona, which I found astounding. I wasn't expecting it, but I do get a lot of just kind of like generic around election times, like what your rights are, constitutionally, of course, and then also just like state rights about voting. So that's my contribution. Is there anybody else who I should hand this off to?
Elizabeth can be invited, and Greg as well.
Okay, Elizabeth.
Thank you. Yeah, I remember studying some parts of the Constitution in high school, and then I'll look things up when something comes into the headlines or a new documentary comes out. So I feel like I take for granted the Constitution, but then when it comes up in day-to-day life or I hear something about it, then I'll go like look up the section or the amendment. So I think
yeah, I'm sorry, your voice.
Oh, I don't have a good connection.
I know.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. That's okay. Can you, I'll invite Greg to speak. Thank you. Frank, you're going to be last.
So I certainly remember learning about the Constitution in high school, but that to me doesn't mean a whole lot because you learn about words. And we know that it's the interpretation of the Constitution that keeps changing depending on the various states, state Supreme Courts, the various justices over hundreds of years at the National Supreme Court. It's constantly changing. And what I found useful has been to just read and keep reading. And I rely a lot on the New York Times. Certainly recent stuff by in the 1619 project. The book is full of stuff about the Constitution and rights and efforts to suppress those rights. Also, Ibrahim X. Kendi is a good source of information, particularly as to how the changing interpretation of the Constitution impacted, Black and brown people and indigenous people over time. So it's a constantly changing scenario. Also, I think the Brennan Center online is good, a good source of information. So it's a process.
Wendy, are you able to talk to us? Okay, I think, oh, now she's gone. Oh, no, there she is.
He's here.
Did somebody disappear? Okay. Okay. Go ahead, Frank. Tell us how you learn.
Well, I started back when I had joined the Air Force, and I had decided quite specifically I wasn't fighting for a party, and I wasn't fighting for different people's ideology. I really, in depth, believed I wanted to fight for the Constitution. Because even though I felt Black people didn't have a lot, but in 66, 67, I thought the Constitution was going to be the only thing that would save all of us in the long run. So I was very deep into what the Constitution had said, but even more important, what did it mean? And why were certain parts written when they were written? And what authority that it gave? But particularly when we started voter suppression, the first place I went back to, because that is our baseline, is our Constitution. And I keep thinking, how do we fight if we don't standing on the structure which gave us the reason to fight? So I went back to the Constitution to find out what it said about voting. And then I found out as I read it, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, this isn't all that difficult. This isn't all that legalistic either. It's really just plain. You can just read a couple of words I looked up in a dictionary, like a bridge. And I come to realize that we have no Supreme Court anymore. And the people who were supposed to be our representatives aren't. And then I realized from the Declaration of Independence, those people are not the government anyway, we are. And if we don't know how to govern ourselves, it's kind of foolish to be complaining about them for what they're not doing if we're not doing it ourselves. We are the government.
Thanks,
The
Frank.
Declaration of Independence says that, and the Constitution gives us our marching orders on what we have to do.
Okay, thanks. We need to move on to the next question if we're gonna, the ones that we're gonna scribe and keep track of. So I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I'm going to, but I did. Okay, so the next question is round 3. This one, Kara, no, who said this? Elizabeth, we're gonna scribe this one. Okay, thank you. It's focused on the Arizona legislature and possible concerns people might have about how legislation affects our communities, our families, our friends, ourselves, our colleagues, and people we care about, even if we don't know them. This is not meant to be about how you vote, but rather about how legislation might impact you in various ways. Please talk about yourself and your concerns or hopes rather than criticizing particular people, political positions, or parties. Okay, here's the question. If the state legislature passes bills that limit mail-in ballots, drop-off sites for ballots, or other actions that make it more difficult for all of us to vote, how could this affect you, your community, and your concerns about democracy? Again, please talk about your own reality or the community or people that you care about who would be impacted. Does that make sense? I really want us to focus on the question and make it personal. Any questions about that? Okay, let's go. Who would like to speak first?
Speak first.
No, Frank, you go last.
Okay.
Sorry, you're too powerful of a voice at this point.
I can go first.
Thank you, Patricia.
For me, what comes to my mind first is that people like me who don't have transportation and rely on the bus system, it makes it difficult if we don't have the mail-in ballots to vote, or if the drop boxes are limited or the voting places are limited. And for people who work, I haven't worked in a long time, but people who do work, and I know when I used to work, have difficulty accessing during the hours that it's open with their jobs. And something positive that I really like that has been legislated is that recently that people could go to any voting place rather than just the one by where they live, because people who are out in the community with doctor's appointments or working or whatever may find a different voting place easier to access, or less have a hassle, less of a problem to access than some other access, or people that have transportation can go to one where they believe the lines may be not as long than to another place.
Thanks, Patricia. Do you want to invite someone to join to share their experience with this or their ideas?
Sure. Abby, I'll invite you to speak next if you're interested.
I pass. And
You pass. Okay.
yes,
Okay, Abby.
Kara.
Thank you, Abby. As a poll worker for the last 3 or 4 cycles, and this last one, where, as Patricia mentioned, it has the advantage of everyone in Pima County being able to go to any of the polling sites that we have. And it was just a phenomenal system that worked well. And I thought it was great. And affecting me being able to drop off our ballots easily ahead of the date even, I hope that it will continue this way. And I feel from my standpoint, it's very easy. With that being said, I have heard and understand that there are people that for one reason or another have not been able to work under this system, and there's always room for improvement. Over. And I'd like to call on Pierre.
Okay, thanks. Well, I have never voted in the state of Arizona, but in other states, I would say more than half the time I do take advantage of using the mail-in or absentee ballot. My sense of having been here in Arizona, and I work at a school, and it's pretty clear to me that a lot of the people who do manual labor at the school, they are working very long hours, sometimes starting as early as 4 or 5 in the morning, and certainly some of them working until 8 at night. And so I can imagine that people might find themselves in circumstances where, if they were able to vote in the first place, which I know some of them aren't, but if they were, they might not be able to do it on the particular day of the election. Shall I call on Greg?
Sure, thanks, Pierre. Yeah, I mean, all of those points are spot on. I think Patricia kind of had a good litany of those people most impacted. I mean, we know that poor and low-income people, Black, Brown, Indigenous people on reservations are proportionally overrepresented in terms of those people that will be denied access to making it easy, or denied access to dropping off the ballot. Folks from distances don't have transportation. They don't have the funds for transportation. those are the folks that they're actually trying to dissuade from voting. In many ways, I come to feel like it's like, they really don't want you to vote. They certainly don't want them to vote, poor Black, brown folks and indigenous folks to vote, because we know who they vote for. But on a personal level, yeah, anything that makes it more difficult is just wrong. I mean, I felt impacted last summer when I was out of state and had requested a ballot be sent to my address in Michigan, and they didn't send it. I called a week before the election, and they said, "Oh, we sent that ballot to your address in in Pinal County." I said, "Well, that's not what I told you to do. I gave you instructions in writing." "Oh, well, we'll send it out in the mail." Well, of course, it took another 3 or 4 days. I don't know if my ballot ever made it back in time to vote in that primary election. I mean, clearly, I felt like my vote was being suppressed or restricted, whether in fact it was intentional or not. But yeah, we need to continue to fight them. And I'll ask Elizabeth to go, if you would.
I'll pass. And pass it to
Molly.
Molly?
Yeah, Molly has a question.
I'm trying to unmute and mute myself quickly enough on my phone, so I'm sorry. My laptop is buried somewhere where my husband is playing video games, so I don't want to have to traverse that area. No, but seriously, when it comes to the mail-in ballots, like we utilize that, and it's a huge deal for us. One, with COVID, we were definitely people who wanted to stay 6 feet apart, wanted to avoid, getting into any sort of like crowd or near people. Masked up. We didn't want confrontation. It's Arizona. So, being able to mail in the ballot was huge for us in a pandemic time as well, right? So health also, right? We're young, but acknowledging that that's not the case for everybody. Not everyone has their health, actually, regardless of age. But for the folks who need that mail-in ballot, it's just devastating that they wouldn't be able to have that if they're at home because of a medical condition, especially after a pandemic. Just seems really farcical. Workers, of course, like we talked about. I would also say the guns at the ballot was pretty concerning for myself and my husband, just feeling like it's going to be confrontational. People are going to get maybe a little more jumpy, which is just something that happens when you have a firearm on your possession in a very supercharged atmosphere. And then, just our neighbors, everybody who we know is out working diligently, working very hard, who don't have the availability to take that time off. It's mail-in ballots have just been amazing. So that's my feedback. And do I have anybody to jump it over to?
I don't think Beth is gone.
Beth.
Are you there, Beth?
Hi, I didn't hear. Sorry. I find, 85% of Arizonans vote at mail-in ballot. And all these laws are trying to restrict voting for a problem that doesn't exist. And I think our march should be towards expanding voting. And I think mail-in ballot is really like the best way to vote, because I can sit there, I can watch a video, I can figure out. It takes me a long time to vote, because I look at the ballot, I read the measure, and then I read the books that they sent to me, and then I go online and I watch the local broadcast of the debates, so I can figure out how to vote. And I think if you're there, and I think that's why judges get short shrift, and these horrible judges kept getting reelected, because people aren't taking the time to read. And I think we need to educate the public more about utilizing the ability to sit down and find this information on the internet while they're voting, before they ever step to the polling place.
Thank you, Beth. I'll try Wendy one more time. Wendy, do you want to speak to this question? Okay. Nope, I guess not. And Simmer did acknowledge he had to go. He's like 15 years old and has a lot of family. He's the oldest son and he has family commitments. I mean, he's in school, but Pierre, he's in school from about 7 a.m. or 6:50 until about 5:30 every day, Monday through Friday. Okay, so I am going to weigh in on this one before I ask Frank to. So I definitely agree with what everyone has said. I use the mail-in ballots. I am not physically comfortable standing for long periods of time. So a mail-in ballot or being able to hand deliver it to the main office at 22nd and Kolb, I think it is, was really, really important for me. And also I have a lot of friends who are Tohono and live far flung from the reservation from main centers. And it would be, I remember seeing photos of Native folks riding on horseback to get their ballots in, you know, and I think that any curtailing of that would impact my friends directly. And I don't want that. I don't want that. Okay, Frank, your turn.
Well, I have a consideration about this because you mentioned about just not me personally, but about family and friends. And I always think of the people I've always known. And the first person spoke about taking the bus. When you start to restrict time, opening times, you're really going to impact them because the bus schedule is not always reliable. When you start restricting number of days that you can vote, most people I know go to church, and that's where they start doing their voting and their participation. So when you start restricting those days, but one of the biggest fears that I have about voting, it's not just me or what's happening nowadays and shorting people, but it's for my grandkids. Because if we start taking the voting rights away, and we know they are focused and they are directed at certain groups, so if certain groups be harder, they give up, is you take the rights away and it will return to the 50s. And I don't want my grandkids to have to go through that. It's us reverting backwards and losing all the progress we've made. And that's going to affect all of us. And it affects me. And I'm afraid that it'll affect my grandkids. That's my concern if we don't fight today.
Thank you, Frank. Now, Elizabeth and Abby both passed. Are one of you ready to express yourself now?
I'm okay as described to just pass again. My head's not really thinking. I'm just
okay. Abby, okay. Abby, how about you? Would you contribute now? Abby?
Yes,
yeah, there you are.
Yeah, can you repeat the question?
Sure, I'd be glad to. Okay, let me I have to go up to it. Okay. It's focused on Arizona legislature and possible concerns people might have about how legislation affects our communities, our families, our friends, ourselves, or the people we care about. If the state legislature passes bills that limit mail-in ballots, drop-off sites for ballots, and other actions that make it more difficult for all of us to vote, how could this affect you, your community, and your concerns about democracy? Again, it's not about the parties or political positions, but your own concerns or hopes. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I'm thinking, I pass. Greg, you want to answer the question?
Well, everyone's answered. You're the last one. Although I can say that Simmer, to remind you that Simmer did say earlier that he believes it's very important to vote whenever you can.
Oh, yeah.
We'd love to hear your thoughts, Abby.
Yeah, it is important to vote, and I always vote. If I don't have the opportunity to vote, I will feel like my right was taken away from me.
Thank you, Abby. Yeah, thank you. I want to also say that Simmer and several Muslim friends of mine are immigrants or asylum seekers or refugees that have gained voting rights by being here long enough and gaining citizenship. Although Simmer was born here, but his parents weren't. And to them, voting is vital. They feel it so deeply as something that they can use to express their dignity and their loyalty. These are words they've used to me, their loyalty to the United States by voting, however they choose to vote. So I wanted to share that with you. Okay, you know what? We're back on time. We're exactly on time. Okay, the last question is an action question. And it's about, and this is also scribed, Elizabeth. It's meant to help each of you consider what you can do to act upon your ideas and concerns. Frank Thompson put forward suggestion that we could form a group or join with other groups to put forward legislation and to consider how to use the Constitution to support our actions. Consider your own personal abilities and realities, to put forward ideas that you are able to implement for yourself. Consider and describe an action that you can take over the next few months to support voting rights for yourself and or your community. It's like a creative or practical brainstorm. We're going to scribe it, or Elizabeth's going to scribe it for us. Again, consider and describe an action you can take over the next few months to support voting rights for yourself and your community. Who would like to start? Thank you, Kara.
Just writing to our senators, I sort of downplayed them before, but there are, just this morning I learned, and I wasn't aware, that there is a House resolution on the floor right now to have the United States pass the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. That's one of my heartfelt passions, to get that passed in the United States. And so we can write our congressmen to support them, get them to co-sponsor the bill, and get the Senate to go along with it too. And I'd like to pass it on to Patricia.
For me, I will continue to be alert to my emails when I can try to make the time to read the emails that come in from different groups. to try to also write my Congress persons related to voting issues and or other issues, and sign relevant petitions. Like this morning, I just signed, or sometime today, it wasn't this morning, I signed a petition for the John Lewis Voting Rights Act for that to be passed. And I will continue to try to be alert about voting violations that I have seen, and try to write to my congresspersons, as I did this past summer. I wrote to the congresspersons about the, I believe, a violation of people's rights with the city of Tucson elections, where for people that have a mailing address that's different than their residence address, like me, it says you have to certify that this is your residence, that you live at this residence, which is not true because it was my mailing address. And in order to vote, and they said, well, you can go out and vote. Well, I'm concerned, well, I could be persecuted for fraud if I vote when it's not my residence. And they're telling people, and they've had other calls. I'm not the only one who's called, and I bet you there's lots of people who don't call. And some people may just vote, and some people may not, because, you know, of what you have to certify. That's not the reality. And so I did write to my to the ward council and the Congress persons about that issue. And I also wrote to the Brennan Center about that issue. And I will continue to try to pursue that issue in the future, and other issues that I might see in the future. When I'm trying to, I know voting is so much of a democracy, and I've got so much on my plate and so much time that I'm really delayed in writing letters that I need to write and stuff like that. I mean, the emails I can sign quickly because I just make a few little changes or whatever. But other letters, personal letters, et cetera, I'm just so delinquent in writing and et cetera. But with the voting, I know how important it is to our democracy that I've tried to prioritize that over everything else. And so I have, and I will try to continue to prioritize that if I can.
Can you call on someone, please?
I'm sorry. How about Beth?
Hi, my intentions to do, like, I've even sat down to write a voting legislation, and I have so much to add to that, and I would love to work with somebody to get that out. We need ranked choice voting clear across this country, but certainly in Arizona and everywhere. And they're trying to make ranked choice voting illegal. Thank God we have Katie Hobbs, so she doesn't pass. You have to make sure she doesn't pass whatever the Republican legislator is trying to pass, and trying to answer a problem that doesn't exist. There's I should pay more attention to CEBV. I can't remember what it's, citizens something voting, beyond voting, citizens engagement beyond voting. It's Arizona based, and they constantly tell you what you can do, and you can sign up for requests to speak and speak and they tell you when you sign in to speak on certain bills, and they give you the background for the bills and the best way to vote. And I know I need to participate in that more, participate in government more, to the 30 days to protest the Biden's new anti-Geneva Convention asylum bill regulation. I need to sign in for that, and ask that others do too. And we just need to become participants in our government. And I know I need to do that more. I need to get out of my head and I have a lot to offer, and start doing it, and start doing requests to speak, and start write legislation that can be an initiative that gets passed, even if it's small, like ranked choice voting, or big, like, rewriting the voting laws so that the legislator can't do what they're doing. So that, and one of the codes would be to say, you know, that no law can be passed that limits voting any more than it currently is. You can only extending. Anyway, those are some thoughts. And if nobody knows about, if people don't know about request to speak, I urge you to go on cebv.org and see all that they have to offer. They have something for every day, and they have like a few hours on Sunday that they get together, tell you what legislation's happening. They have voting guides.
You want to put it in the
and-
chat, Beth, the website, so we can share it? Okay. Again, I want to remind you, I want you to think practically about what you all can actually do. Not everything that needs to be done, but what you actually commit to doing. There's no wrong answers. Nobody expects each of us to do everything. You know, I'm a little bit concerned that people are talking about everything that needs to be done when I want you to pick a goal that's reachable for yourself so you feel successful. I want you to be successful in achieving your goals. That's one of the important principles of community conversations. Okay, Beth, do you want to call on somebody now, please?
Well, you go ahead.
Okay, Molly?
Yeah, I will say that this has been like 11 months of really going hard in the paint on signing up for everything. I'm like so exhausted, signing up for the League of Women Voters, and paying my membership dues to them and actually attending their meetings, signing up for calls like this, right? Going and volunteering at my local food bank right down the street, Nourish off 9th Ave and Grant, talking to every single person that seems like they're experiencing frustration with what's going on around them, right? Something is small in a conversation of, oh, my rent just went up $400 this month, right? And then kind of just playing off of that, like, okay, like that's really unfortunate. What are you doing about it? Do you know you can attend your city council meetings? Do you know you can do that on Zoom? It's been amazing to me how many people my age don't know that they can literally attend a city council hearing on Zoom and get the agenda ahead of time, have minutes to speak if they want to. So I've been really doing a lot of just, I think, boots on the ground, talking to everybody that I possibly can, signing up for everything that I can, having these kinds of conversations that we're having in this meeting. And then, also volunteering a lot. That's been huge for me, talking to the people. I think a big thing that was said to me one time that really stuck was meeting people where they are. And so in doing that, you're talking to people in a place of comfort, in a place of vulnerability, in a place where they are, really able to emotionally connect with you on a very deep and profound level, as long as you're willing to go there as well. And maybe you're not in the 1% and don't know how to have that conversation, right? So a lot of it is that just volunteering, introducing myself to everybody, voter registration. That's something I've been trying to do with a local nonprofit high school up the street, ACYR, that's like in our neighborhood. And they have a great program. They're a nonprofit. They help students who are disadvantaged, marginalized, all sorts of stuff. They've never had a voter registration drive. And they have students who are anywhere between 14 and 30. And they don't ever do anything like that because they're really tired and they're already a part of a nonprofit group that's stretched thin too. So I think also finding areas of bringing the community together. I've talked with Rio Salado College because they're right across the street. Chicanos por la Causa, that's also just across the street. Like doing some sort of I'm really taking a lot of time, so I apologize, but we were trying to set up almost a block party on the corner of 6th Ave and Fillmore Belmore, where a lot of development is going on. A lot of people are getting pushed out of this market because they can't afford to rent here, but they work here. They're being told that this is supposed to be a walkable urban code that is getting developed where they have been living, but they're getting pushed out into communities that isn't walkable urban code. They can't take the light rail. They'll be forced to commute in. They're spending more money on gas, their car bills, things of that nature. So I think there's a lot that I'm trying to do, but to your point, very like grassroots, very in my space where I am. And so those are some of the things that I'm trying to do. Sorry, that's a lot.
Thanks, Molly. I realized my error. I didn't mean to invite people to tell us everything they were trying to do, but maybe just one or two items so that everybody will have a chance to share what they can do. Since I'll go ahead and Greg, have you gone already? Can you go next, please? You're muted, Greg.
I just want to reiterate and encourage people to follow Beth's advice about getting, following civic engagement beyond voting. It's a wealth of information. There's more information than you could possibly use, but as you call through some of the things that they recommend or focus on, you can set some priorities in terms of what do you really want to act on. For instance, Poor People's Campaign recently identified help me out, Greg, 5 priorities: housing, homelessness, voting rights, Christian nationalism issues, indigenous rights, and I'm missing, climate and environment. So those are the kinds of things that we've been kind of focusing on. Also, we've joined a coalition of other organizations, the People First Economy Coalition, that's made up of about 20 other grassroots and 401 and 501s, nonprofit organizations that is engaging in activism and lobbying around those priority issues. Budgets, help for the homeless, rental issues, any number of things that would be on a social justice platform. As Satbir has said, you can't do all of them. Let's set some priorities for yourself. What are those things you really want to do to get involved? What is your passion? Just as Frank's passion is voting rights. Find out what you want to do and how you can hone your skills and knowledge in those areas, and then act in concert with other organizations that you can support and engage with, because you've got to have power behind you. You got to have organization and hopefully coalition of people behind you in order to affect any real change. And recently I spent about 10 hours last week listening to committee hearings in the Arizona legislature in both the House and Senate sides. And it's like, well, it's beyond belief. Check it out. I couldn't do it this week. It was just, overwhelming to me, because no matter what people say, no matter what testimony they offer, the legislators do what they want to do anyway. Even if there is no support from we the government, they'll do what they want anyway. But at least sometimes you can speak out and let them know that there's opposition there. So those are my suggestions. Whether you do it in person or through another organization, or the online request to speak doesn't mean you have to request to speak in person. You can also register your support or opposition to a piece of legislation electronically that the legislators can and do view, I'm told. So those are my suggestions. And thank you, Beth, for bringing that up. I'm done.
Pierre, what goals can you honor for yourself?
Yeah, I was just thinking so I'm at a high school, and it employs a large number of people. And I know that the board of trustees regularly, visits policies like compensation and holidays. And, I'm just thinking out loud here that, if it hasn't already been brought up, then, maybe I could ask, what are the policies regarding making time available for staff to ensure that they're able to vote and not stuck during work hours. I think that could be a conversation, and I don't know if it's been had. And again, I think the larger the institution, probably the more impactful such a policy would be. But I've worked at plenty of nonprofit organizations that were considered to be, or consider themselves to be, progressive, but did not give staff the day off on election day. And I don't know, I think it's a conversation worth having.
Thank you, Pierre. Elizabeth, did you want to just scribe, or did you want to? Oh, you want, okay. Abby, how about you?
I volunteer in my community and empower others to be active.
Thank you. And Frank? What are you gonna do?
Well, I work with the three major organizations I'm with, but what my focus is, I limit my focus to voting rights, as Greg knows, and the people know me. I concentrate on being associated with like the League of Women Voters. I find out people was there so I could talk to them, the civic engagement beyond voting, so I could find out what laws there are. And I try to get together with any groups that has something to do with voting, not to understand how we can help them. Right now, with this presentation tonight, I'm trying to get people together who can understand that we need to create the laws that we need. And for that, we've got to make sure that those people who've learned how to do that don't just disappear whenever their initiative or whatever they created, they work with, and then when they don't just disband and leave all that information and that knowledge to the wind. So that's what I'm focused on, is getting that information together so we can make a cottage industry here in Arizona of creating the initiatives and rules that we can actually move forward with.
Thanks, Frank. I do want to also weigh in. And I do want to mention that I'm on the board of something called the Arizona Faith Network, which is very concerned with voting rights. One of their initiatives is concerned with voting rights and other things of those who are incarcerated and those who are returning from incarceration and those that have been wrongly incarcerated and have been found innocent, among other things. So I advise you to also look at, because I work with the Arizona Faith Network, because they're a 501c3 that knows how to negotiate the legislation. And frankly, I can't remember who said it. I think it was you, Frank. Yeah, it was you, Frank. And they do teach people how to actually engage with those that with their initiatives and their bills and how to do that and move those forward. They actually do training on that through partnership with other organizations. And let's see. Everyone's gone now. Okay, so we don't really have to have a report out because we've been listening to each other. Frank, do you want to put your email or some way to contact you if anyone wants to join that, what you talked about with legislation around voting rights? You want to put that in the chat? There we go. Sunny Lee 1948 at gmail.com. Is that your birth year, Frank?
Yep.
Excellent. Okay. And let's see. So you can, anyone can take that who would like to explore more about voting rights with Frank. Boy, we've had a lot of good ideas. Beth has things in the chat too. So we will, the chat will get saved and can be shared. Elizabeth is going to email me what she scribed. Of course, I know Vasu. Yes, Pierre. Yeah. Yeah. I figured are you connected with the Franciscan Renewal Center?
No, I'm actually with the Jesuits at Brophy. Sorry, just
Okay.
for everyone else's reference, I was just sending a private note to Satbir about a mutual
Friend of ours who was
connection. Yeah.
who was part of AFN. Yeah.
All
Who was
right.
very active in the community. We need to close very soon, but Beth has her hand up. Yes, Beth.
So what I was going to comment when Frank started talking about our right to put forth legislation. So a bunch of votes happened in this past election that has restricted voting that the people themselves passed. Plus, not to mention the governorship, the way the governorship is passed if the governor is not available. We voted in this unelected person to take the position instead of the state person. So there was a bunch of things passed that we need to work to undo, but it has made petitions and everything and voting a lot harder from the things that went before the voters it was worded kind of cleverly, and the voters were deceived and we passed them. So I urge you to look at CBV's positions on that and do some look into it and see what we can do to undo it.
Frank, there are a lot of kudos to you in the chat for your presentation. Can you share your PowerPoint? Or may I share your PowerPoint with everyone at this meeting?
Sure.
Okay. I think I have pretty much, I don't know Wendy if I have where her email is, and I don't know, and she isn't responding. But I can forward Frank's PowerPoint. Is it changed? Is it different than the one you originally sent, Frank?
No.
Okay. Okay, good. Okay. Okay. We stayed within our time frame. I'm so honored. Thank you, everyone. Frank, any final words? Any final thoughts for us before I do a closing?
No, it's the only thing I can say is I'm hoping I can connect with right people, and if you guys got connections, that we don't lose that knowledge of how to create the initiatives and the referendums, that the people who've done it in the past don't just disband without passing that information and that knowledge forward. And now I want to get help with getting that done.
Thank you, Frank. So traditionally, I do chant something from my Sikh tradition to share, to close our evening, and that's what I will do now. But before we do that, I want everyone to, we'll go around and say one word about your experience tonight. Again, please, just one or two words, not a whole paragraph, not a whole sentence, just a brief couple of words, 1 to 2 words about your experience tonight. I will model it hopeful. Kara?
Invigorating.
Connected.
Grateful.
Reflective.
Learn something.
Encouraging.
Able, capable, able.
Go ahead, Frank. What's your word?
Grateful.
Molly, it looks like she had to go.
I saw Wendy took off her microphone that she was going to say something. She's
Oh,
with.
go ahead, Wendy, please, go ahead. I'm sorry. Unfortunately, we can't hear you, Wendy. Can you put it in the chat? Well, we know she stayed from for the whole thing. Wendy, we know you stayed for the whole thing, even though we couldn't hear you. And I just want to thank you very much for doing that. That shows a great commitment to being here. Okay, now I'll share with you. If she puts it in the chat, anything in the chat, just alert me and we'll read it before the end. Tere meha da jivana tu de gay ardas Guru Guru Vahe Guru Guru Ramdas Tere me da bolna tu de gay ardas Guru Guru Das Tere me de kena Udage Ardas Guru Guru Vahe Guru Ramdas Guru Guru Vahe Guru Guru Guru. Basically, it was a prayer thanking the infinite, the beloved, the great expanse that holds us all in life for what takes care of us, for what covers us, for what sustains us. Thank you for sharing. We will be in touch, and we will send you the PowerPoint and a copy of a link to the video recording that will be on YouTube, on COPA's YouTube channel, that you can share with friends and colleagues so they can benefit from our discussion tonight. Good night, everybody. I'm going to close the meeting now.
Good
Good
night.
night.
Good night.